Welcome to the Lion's Roar podcast, where we talk about all things related to Calvary Baptist Academy and Hidden Treasures Preschool. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Tim Schmig, the Executive Director of the Michigan Association of Christian Schools, MACS. MACS works to promote, defend, and assist Christian education across the state of Michigan. Dr. Schmig has spent decades working with MACS and Christian schools. He primarily represents MACS in Lansing and Washington, working with lawmakers and educators to protect the freedom and future of Christian education. Dr. Schmig, thanks for joining me today. Glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. It's a blessing to be here with you.
Yeah. Dr. Schmig, let's start with your story a little bit. How did you get into the education world? I don't think you started as the executive director of MACS.
I did not start there. I was a visitor up at a church camp when I was 14 years old. And it was at that point in my life that I heard the Lord Jesus Christ died for my sins. I asked him to forgive me of my sin and to accept me into his kingdom. And after becoming a Christian, I did as best as I could going back to the public school to be a witness and a testimony to my friends with some success. And after a year's time, I asked if I could attend a Christian school. And the Christian school that I wanted to go to was in Minneapolis. And my dad, who cared for me, he loved me, but he said that's something that he wouldn't pay for. So as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, I went out and got a job, enrolled myself in the Christian school, and every single month when the bill came, it came with my name on it. I wanted to be in Christian education as a junior in high school. Then the next year, I went to another Christian school. Sue joined me there, and then we went down to Bob Jones University.
Sue is your wife?
Sue is my wife, my girlfriend at the time.
Okay.
And we went down to Bob Jones University, and after graduating from Bob Jones, I taught in a Christian school in South Carolina, and then taught in a wonderful Christian school in South Bend, Indiana.
So what'd you teach?
I taught students.
Nice.
Nice and quick. No, I was high school history, government, social studies, health, athletic director. You know, the typical Swiss Army knife of every Christian school teacher. And I absolutely enjoyed it. And then the Lord moved us up here to Michigan. I was in the business world for a while. And in 2000, 26 years ago, I was asked to be working with MACS. And I'm just thankful to be able to do what I'm doing. I work with some of the nicest people in the world, and I love it.
Yeah, that's cool. I know that, our stories are similar in one sense, in the fact that, I grew up going to public school and then came to Christian school in high school. Similarly, the difference is I came kicking and screaming. It was my parents' choice.
Yes.
And for you, it was the opposite. It was your choice. When you look at public education, you look at Christian education, we're not here doing bash public education by any case. I have some great memories and some things that I gained in the public school as a student, but there are also some challenges as I look back. What would you say are the main differences between a Christian private school that MACS kind of works with and supports in our public schools and our average communities here in Michigan?
Well, I think you would start with the essence in that when parents put their children in a Christian school, they're voluntarily paying tuition for the education. It's not taken out of their property taxes or anything like that. And parents make the choice, I think, from what I've heard, to put their child in the Christian school for two reasons: to get something they cannot get in the other schools, and which would be Bible reading and prayer, which we have every single day, and then also character.
Spiritual component.
Absolutely.
The spiritual enrichment.
Yes, because, the Bible says man shall not live by bread alone, and since the 1960s, Bible reading and prayer has been eliminated from the public schools.
Sure.
And the other thing I think that parents put their child in a Christian school for is they want that child to come home better than when they sent them there. They want, truly, the young boy to come home as a boy. They want the young girl to come home as a girl.
Sure.
Not any of the things that are going on in society today, cultural things that are going on.
Yeah, so if you think about that, I think obviously the big thing when parents are making choices about education is what am I missing in the education choices that I have, and that spiritual component has been removed from the classroom, and so we want to add that. And then are there things that are present, like you said, some cultural things or some maybe moral-based character things that are present that we want removed. And so both of that plays into those decisions and wanting to partner with someone who's on the same page with the family.
And I think I have a belief that all education is religious. It's just a matter of whose thou shalts and thou shalt nots you're going to bend your knees to.
Yeah. When you were in education and you were teaching, how did you get into a position that you're in today? What was that transition, moving from a classroom teacher into now you're in leadership in the Michigan Association of Christian Schools?
I moved up here to Michigan to work with a company, and the companies that I worked with, one of the people that was one of my customers is the current president of the Michigan Association of Christian Schools. So in the fall of 1999, when this position started to come open, he asked if I would be interested in working with MACS, not knowing everything that it involved. Now, my kids were in a MACS school, so I understood a little bit about what MACS does. And for me, MACS was fine arts. I knew they had an educators convention. There were just a lot of things that I did on-the-job training with. And I realized from our court case in the 90s, probably the most important dimension I could bring to the Michigan Association of Christian Schools was to be a presence in Lansing, then also Washington, D.C. And so on a regular basis, I'm in both places advocating for parental rights, religious liberty, making sure that we have the opportunity to educate our children according to the dictates of our conscience.
So what are, you talk about the legislative piece of that. What overall kind of is MACS? What does MACS do? What kind of services do they provide to the schools that are a part of MACS? What's that kind of function like?
That's a
I
good
know as a
question.
school, but
that's a very good question. Like, why MACS? Well, I think first and foremost is legislative awareness, legislative protection, having a presence in Lansing and also Washington, D.C. Then the services that MACS can offer to the schools and to the parents. We have a fine arts festival, a senior high fine arts festival. We have a junior high fine arts festival. We have an elementary fine arts festival. And the fine arts festival, in the minds of the students and the parents, is pretty much the brand of MACS, because students will say, "What are you preparing for MACS?"
Sure.
It's that. Then we have an educators convention for the teachers. We also offer accreditation, which oversees the school and the ministry and gives an outside look in. We offer sports. We offer academic testing. We offer different things that we think should be a benefit or could be a benefit to the students and the parents. And I look at MACS as a smorgasbord in that we lay out all of these things, and if it works for you, take it. If it doesn't work for you, we love you, and we will just try to do better to have something that you're interested in.
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of that old adage that we're better together, the idea of schools coming together and having a representation in Washington. As an individual school, keeping up with those things can be challenging. Having a presence there and actually having your voice heard, it would be challenging. So MACS has been a big help in that way. How old is MACS? When did MACS first begin, and what's the history there?
Well, as best as we can find, I found incorporation papers for MACS from 1974. I found the first educators.
Yeah, it's the year I was born.
There you go. Could it get any better?
Great,
how providential is this, David?
There we go.
And so two great ideas were born in 1974. Can we just say that? Something like that? And there were a number of smaller organizations. There was an M.A.C.S. group, whatever that was. And then there were some other smaller ones. But in 1974, they were all brought together under the umbrella of MACS. And so we see that as part of the legacy that we want to just hold on to.
Okay. How have you seen, since you've been at MACS, because you weren't there in 74, obviously you started in, I think you said around 2000 roughly,
yes.
So what have you seen change in MACS or in Christian school movement in Michigan, or Christian schools in general? Lots there that you can kind of grab onto. But what have you seen as movement from then till now, both positive and maybe even challenges that are...
Okay, let's start with the challenges. That one's easy. in that in 1992 was the high water mark for the Michigan Association of Christian Schools. We had close to 63 schools. We had an enrollment of over 7,500 in all of them. That, and most schools will say that was their high water mark. Then, through a number of reasons, schools would close, parents would lose interest, parents would start homeschooling, and that we're not anywhere near that number today. However, there isn't anybody who says, well, we realize MACS isn't as big as it used to be, therefore we don't expect as much from MACS as they used to give. And the motto that we work with today is doing more with less. We try to offer as many services as we possibly can and be creative in financing them and how we do them. So that's one of the challenges. One of the great blessings is I really think that the parents today that have their children in a Christian school are much more committed to the cause of Christian education and dedicated to the idea that I will sacrifice if I have to put my child in a Christian school, because the alternative for them is something that they would prefer to not deal with.
Wow. So what other changes have you seen over the landscape of Christian schools? You said, of course, there's been some decline in maybe the number of Christian schools from its peak. As far as the demographics of the schools and what they look like, how have you seen changes there? I mean, I know when I started in Christian education, I started as a student in my early years, kindergarten in first grade, and then we went into the public school because our Christian school closed. Mm-hmm. And in that day, I was in a ACE school where it's kind of the one-room schoolhouse with multiple grades in one room.
Right.
And so, we've seen those schools maybe not survive as much. And today you have much more traditional classrooms in by and large across many of our Christian schools. But what other changes have you seen as far as curriculum offerings, course offering, programs, budgets, all that kind of stuff?
I think the biggest change that I've seen, and you're talking to the old guy, and I embrace it, but it's technology. There was a day where schools had a library with many books in them. Classrooms would have their own bookshelves and library for the students. Today, just about everything that you can do with a library media center is right on their tablet, right on their Chromebook. And to fight that is a losing cause. Embrace it for what the good that's there, in that the amount of technology. Like, for example, every single book that a kid used to carry home in their backpack, that and more is right here in a tablet or an iPad. And so that's one of the biggest things. That's one of the great blessings. But then there's also a danger in that there's just things out there that you would prefer that the students not be able to get to. And with the filters that they have today, they're protected. And I think for the most part, when parents look at Christian education, there was a day that they would think, oh, but my kids are not going to get, and then they would fill in the blank, whereas we are much more readily accessible and available for some of the things that they would be looking at.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I would say that probably on the positive side is there was a time when you had to make a trade-off in order to maybe access the spiritual formation, biblical values, and some of that, but maybe there were things that your kids couldn't do. And I think you're right. There's less of that. There's more opportunities in whether it's athletics, robotics, fine arts, like some of those extracurriculars are more readily available. Even the more and more Christian schools offer more and more electives and have opportunities there where they're able, and plugging into even programs within their communities for trades or co-ops and those kind of things, that more and more schools are more cooperative with community programs and their kids have access. Dual enrollment with college, in fact, in some ways it's even more available because you have the normal public offerings in the state, but then many Christian colleges offer some dual enrollment things that are accessible for our students. And so, yeah, I agree with you that that's a big change for the positive. Yeah. I think on the negative side, probably one of the changes that I see, and you might see it more starkly because I was younger, as a student coming in and such. I think sometimes parents maybe are less committed to Christian education than they once were. And so there is a challenge sometimes for the consumer mentality because they want all of those things and don't want their kids to miss out on anything, and we would agree with that. But I think my parents were willing to maybe make that trade-off because of the value of the Christian education, where today maybe there's less parents that are that strongly committed in making that assessment.
And I think part of it, if I can use an analogy, when I think of Christian education, I think of the little boutique deli that you had in your neighborhood. You could go there. The few things that they had were of high quality. Unlike you go to a big box store or one of these, they're open 24 hours a day. You can get whatever you want, and if you don't like it, you can return it. So when that mentality creeps in and it's running in the background of decision making,
Sure,
it creates conflict.
yeah. I'm thankful for the many parents that have chosen Christian education and that are
Absolutely.
committed to the cause, and God's continued to bless. As we think about MACS in Lansing, in our state capital, our fourth graders just came back from Lansing a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
I know you were there just this week. What are some things going on in our state? We're going to get to the national thing here in a second, kind of the big news, so to speak. But what generally is going on right now in our state that Christian schools and parents with kids in Christian schools should be aware of?
Well, I think one of the big things in December, I sat in House Oversight, and I listened to the interim president, or whatever her title was, for the Michigan Board of Education. And they were asking her pertinent questions that the Michigan Board of Education wants to put sex education under the rubric of health education for the purpose of not having to let the parents opt into this.
At all ages.
At all ages. And so we sat there and listened, and one of the things that I thought was interesting is one of the representatives asked her, how many genders are there? She couldn't answer it.
Tough question.
It is. She started waffling, and I was sitting right behind her, and if you listen to the tape, you can hear me say 2. I was trying to coach her on that one, but I don't think it sunk in. And parents find that offensive in that in Christian education, you go back to the very foundational book, the book of Genesis, foundational chapter 1, and it says, male and female created he them. In the image of God made he them. And so if there's all of these different genders, I want to know, well, what is the population in America of each individual gender that we need to know about? And like, where are they located and how do you accommodate them? And what I've found is parents want to cut through the nonsense, the verbiage, the pronouns, all of that, and they just want something biblically, truthfully simple, male and female.
Yeah.
And so when you have a Board of Education that can't even answer that, we have our challenges.
I was watching a legislative session in Minnesota, I think it was, not Michigan, but similar topic, talking about sex education and different things. And this was actually, they were debating whether or not to put restrictions on pornographic websites, ways to kind of limit age verification, kind of an idea, so that people that were under the age of, I believe, 18 would have to verify their age in order to access the material. And the spokesperson for the opposition that was speaking at the moment was a transgender person, and they were speaking to the fact that if we did this, then the LGBTQ community would not have access to sex education. And there are children, notice he said children, not adults, but children who need access to pornographic materials because that's the only sex education that represents them. And they were actually, with a straight face, arguing the need for children to access pornography so they could have sexual education of LGBTQ lifestyles. And that's the hill we're climbing and fighting in our country over who makes those decisions about who has access to what at what age.
See, and that's the dichotomy of the false narrative in that, no, there are other options, but they're just not presenting them in that. And one of the things that we've faced in Lansing is they had a couple of bills on school safety. Now, they have this habit of giving it a wonderful title so that if you oppose it, like who would oppose school safety? And one of the things that we worked on in the last session was this, that if there, Lord forbid, if there was some tragic emergency at the school, we just felt that a pastor or clergy would be qualified to help deal with the situation. We were not able to get the word clergy inserted into it. It had to be licensed healthcare professional.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
They're certified therapists and such,
by the state. And one of the other things that we have worked on is just school registration with the state in the interest of safety. And one of the things that one of the state senators said is, we just want to know where the children are. We want them to be safe. And I'm thinking to myself, before I testified on it, every single parent knows where their children are.
Sure.
Every single homeschool parent knows where their children are. You don't need a government database to do that. And in reality, what that person was proposing actually is in opposition to a couple of excellent Supreme Court cases, Charlotte v. Snyder and others, that would say a non-public school person does not have to register like that. And with the government websites, once you open the page, there's so many required fields, you're not able to go on to the next page until you fill everything in.
Well, lots of issues in Lansing, and currently for our parents, there's a big one that's come through in Washington. So we want to talk about that, make our parents aware, and talk about a little bit this new tax credit that's available starting in 2027. So this federal tax credit came through the what's been dubbed the Big Beautiful Bill,
right? Which we refer to as the Family Tax Credit Bill. I mean, basically.
Yep. So the Family Tax Credit Bill, the idea is that individuals can donate money to scholarship funds, and then those scholarship funds can be used to fund scholarships for students in any kind of school setting, private school, religious school, even public school programs, certain programs that students might qualify for or need. And so let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me a little bit about how does this program work? When does it start? And what is the benefits or advantages to families in our Christian schools?
Okay, it will start in 2027.
Okay.
And what you have is the bill was introduced, it was passed, House, Senate, and the President signed it. The regulations for the bill were turned over to Treasury to write them. So we have been in contact on the federal level with the people in Treasury to make sure that the bill is enacted as it's written, that it doesn't go to each state and then the state piecemeals out what they want or puts restrictions on it.
Okay.
And it's a $1,700 tax credit for each individual filing in the House.
Yeah, let me clarify that. I think that there's some confusion sometimes. So whatever your tax bill is, whatever tax you owe, they're reduced by $1,700. You get to direct where that $1,700 goes because you're choosing to put it in the scholarship fund.
Filing jointly, $3,400.
Yeah, it's not a deduction as in the sense like you have your minimum deductions or a standard deduction and it's contributing towards that. This is literally subtracted from what you owe in taxes. So if you owe $1,700 or more in taxes annually, you can voluntarily choose to put your money in one of these scholarship funds. And instead of giving the money to Washington, to the IRS, to this Congress, you're going to give it to a scholarship fund. There's not very many programs where you can direct your tax dollars.
This is unique, and it bypasses in the state of Michigan. We've got a Blaine Amendment, which forbids any public dollars going to any private non-government school.
Let me clarify one more thing because it's gone back and forth. Is it $1,700 per individual if you married filing jointly? Is that $3,400 or is it $1,700?
It's $3,400.
Yeah, there was some debate about that, and it sounds like they've settled out that it's per individual. So if you file jointly, so as a family and you're filing your taxes, it would be $3,400 potentially that you could subtract from your taxes through this tax credit and apply to a scholarship. So they set up these SGOs,
Scholarship Granting Organization.
So I know the American Association of Christian Schools is looking to establish one. Renew a Nation's an organization we work with in our school, and they're establishing one. There's
Herzog Foundation.
Herzog Foundation is a stat. So there's lots of options that families would have to give towards, and then those scholarship granting organizations then push the money to the school which you have directed it towards.
Exactly.
And we then, as a school, would receive those funds and give those funds to our students based upon our scholarship criteria.
As we understand it now, yes, that's correct. And the reason that they came up with the scholarship granting organizations is for the logistics of it, and so that, let's just say there's 120 million people filing taxes. Treasury is not receiving 120 million applications.
Yeah.
They have clearinghouses.
Sure.
And so we're seeing these things start to be fleshed out. In February, I spent 3 days in Atlanta, and this was the main subject matter of how this is going to work, what it's looking like. And at the time, I would say there was more that was not known about it than known, and it seems like with every passing week, pieces are starting to come together. But 2027 is the year.
So that's all good news, potentially. Money directed towards scholarships for students in Christian schools. I'm going to talk about the impact here in a second, but I want to first give kind of the bad news about this and how it works. Though it has been, through the big, beautiful bill there, it's been set up and established, states have to sign in,
opt in,
and accept. And currently, there's about 25 states that have accepted the funds. There's 4 states that have rejected the program and said they're going to opt out.
Right.
And the rest of the states are in some sort of decision, which is where Michigan's at.
Right.
So Michigan's in a place where we're waiting to see if our governor will accept funds. So let me give you the impact for Michigan. Michigan has, according to the data that I found, Michigan has about 4 million tax filers. So 4 million tax returns each year, roughly. And so if you kind of do a little bit of math, and if you were to say that 10% of those 4 million tax filers donated $1,700, that's $680 million available for scholarships for educational institutions. That's at 10%. That's if just 10% of tax filers were to take part in that. If you jump that number and somehow there were 20% of tax filers, you're at $1,360 million.
Yes.
And you can keep doing the math and playing the game. I don't know what the reasonable number is, but that's a ton of money available to stay within the state of Michigan to fund education. And whether you're a public school, private school, Christian school, any type of school, funding is something that seems to always be something
it's the quiet concern, absolutely.
You want more of. And so here's a chance for our governor to say, we will accept these dollars. Because here's the key. Here's the big kicker. If Michigan doesn't accept the funds, I'm still probably, as a person who is an advocate for education, in particular Christian education, I'm probably going to give to ACS or Renew a Nation or Herzog. I'm going to give my dollars because I'm paying it anyway in taxes. I might as well direct that to a Christian school in some other state and let them take advantage of that and benefit from it. But I would much rather see my schools in my state and even my particular Christian school that my kids go to benefit from that. And all it takes is for the governor to say, yes, we'll accept those dollars. And so I guess what I'm asking all of our families to do, and we're going to send some correspondence to you here in the upcoming weeks and such, is to be talking to your representatives in Lansing, be talking to the governor, make phone calls, send letters, let them know that you would like for the governor to say, yes, opt in, accept these dollars, and move this forward so that Michigan's on that green list saying one of the states that have already settled this.
I was going to Washington, D.C., and I was on the same plane with one of the representatives who probably on surface would not be in favor of this. And afterwards, I got to talk to her staff about it. And I just said, do you have any non-public schools in your district? And instantly, she had 6 schools on the tip of her tongue. So she knew her district. And I just said, this is $1,700 that would come back to Michigan schools, Michigan students. Now, let's just say that a governor did not opt in. You and I could still get the $1,700 tax credit. It would just go to a state that accepts it.
Yep.
And so at some point, you would say the state of Michigan is losing 1 point whatever. And when we first started looking at this, we were doing it in quantities of millions. Then we started working it out, and we're talking billions.
Oh, yeah.
And normally you and I don't think in terms like that, but that's what this bill would unleash, is billions of dollars towards education.
Yeah.
So when we look at this, we are thinking it's a very good possibility that we in the state of Michigan could get it, because our governor can do the math, and she's smart enough to say she would prefer to have that money stay in Michigan. She is about Michigan.
For our school specifically, we, in a given year, this past year, we do the math and discounted tuition, so scholarships, discounts, and combined, it's approximately $750,000 that is given out through discounts or scholarships so students can attend Calvary Baptist Academy. If we had 500 people designate their gift through the scholarship fund, those tax dollars at $1,700, that's $850,000. We would be made whole as a school,
right?
And families would be able to have discounted tuition that would qualify for it. And that's if we just come out even. If that number grows, then even more families are receiving less of a tax, they receive an increased direction of their tax funds, but they're also decreasing the cost of their own tuition because more scholarships become more available for more families. And so we have the opportunity to make it more accessible. Christian education is the goal there. So yeah, I encourage families to, as like I said, advocate for this. It's one thing we're going to pray that our governor accepts it, but we need to let her know we're praying and let her know that we want this done. And we're not the only state. There's other states that are in the same boat, and they're doing the same thing. And
the biggest motivating factor is Ohio has already opted in. Indiana has already opted in. So the states right next to us, when they opt in, there's going to be a drain. I would encourage one thing: if you contact the governor or your state representative, the Michigan Senate is working on this as far as contacting her on thing, as positive as possible. Let her know that your kids are in a Christian school or a non-public school, and this would benefit them. The worst thing you can do is, and if you don't vote for this, I'll never vote for you again. Well, number one, we're not going to be able to vote for again, but that is the lowest level of motivation.
Sure. Yeah. Be respectful.
Yes.
State the facts. It's they're motivated by money and influence.
Money and numbers are the two motivating factors.
And this brings a lot of money into the state that we would rather see stay here than go elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Well, as you look at the future of Christian education, and particularly in the state of Michigan, you look ahead 10, 20 years, you've been doing this 26 years in this role, and you look ahead, where do you think things are headed, in particular in the state of Michigan? Do you think we'll ever see a day when, like neighboring states, we have some sort of voucher system or some system where our tax dollars, not the federal, but in our state, follow a student to a school? What is your hope or your vision kind of for what it looks like going forward?
I think until the Blaine Amendment is removed from the Michigan Constitution, we will have to be very creative. Tuition tax credits would be possible, other things like that. When tuition tax credits were introduced in the early 2000s, those opposed to them motivated others very strongly, and it was turned down. So I just think the future of Christian education is bright. I think the future of Christian education is an effort that is worthy of our best efforts, and I just like to think our best day hasn't happened yet. It's still in the future.
Sure. So what advice would you give as we kind of close out our time together to Christian educators, Christian families, those that are in Christian education in the world, particularly, you're in the state of Michigan. So what's your final encouragement or thoughts there?
Encouragement. You're doing the Lord's work, and you are doing a noble thing. You're doing something that is just blessed beyond measure. There's two eternal things in this world, the Word of God and the souls of men, and every single day in a Christian school, those two meet each other. And you can influence the future. I look at the successes of Christian education, those who have gone on to do wonderful things, not necessarily pastors, missionaries, but still faithful to the Lord and remembering the things that they were taught. in the Christian school, in the home. We are there in local apprentice to reinforce the teaching of the parents. It's a great blessing to be in Christian education.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say, Dr. Schmig, that I appreciate your faithful service for many, many years and the work that you've done with MACS and your support in Lansing and Washington, but even just personally, your encouragement. And as an educator, I've been at Calvary Baptist Church for 23 years, I think now, and been in the school side for about 20. And so all of those years you've been around and, you've been the face of MACS. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be ministered to by you and then to work alongside you. And now as we're on the executive committee there together and looking forward to meeting here even in a few weeks and discussing this issue of these tax credits and seeing how we can motivate our state to move forward on this, the governor. And so thank you for sharing your insight. Thank you for your service. And we appreciate you very much. Thank you for listening and paying attention. This has been a little different version of our Lions Roar podcast. And I do trust that you recognize and realize the work that's being done on our behalf through the Michigan Association of Christian Schools. And I'm thankful for them and the partnership we have with them and all of the schools. In fact, tomorrow on our calendar, I know this will air after this, is our Fine Arts Festival for our senior high at Calvary Baptist Academy. We have the privilege of hosting that. And it's always fun to see all of the schools coming together and seeing hundreds and hundreds of young people that have been trained to serve the Lord with their gifts and talents and using them on that day. And it's, I think, a glimpse of, for all of us, of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and that it's bigger than all of us. And so I trust that you are enjoying the partnership with Calvary Baptist Academy. If there's questions you have about this tax issue or the scholarships or anything else, please reach out. We'll be sending you some specific information about how you can advocate and so that you can be up to date on what's going on in that area and many others. And so thanks again for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of the Lions Roar podcast.